आज हमारा टॉपिक है डिग्रीज ऑफ कोरिलेशन। डिग्रीज ऑफ कोरिलेशन हमने टाइप्स ऑफ कोरिलेशन पढ़े हैं, जिसमें हमने पढ़ा है first we have two types of correlation, that is positive correlation and negative correlation. Then we discussed about the next classification of correlation, that is linear correlation and non-linear correlation. Now we will proceed towards the degrees of correlation. Basically, we know that correlation is relationship between two variables. When two variables change in the same direction, that is positive correlation, and when they move or change in the opposite direction, that is called negative correlation. From this positive correlation, or when things change in the same direction, we have at that time degrees of correlation. What is the value of correlation and what that value explains us, shows us? Generally, the value of correlation ranges from 0 to 1. The correlation value can be either 0 or 1 or between 0 and 1. And also the value of correlation can be -1. First, we categorize this correlation on the basis of degrees. We have 3 degrees. One is perfect correlation. The next one is limited correlation or limited degree of correlation. And the third one is no correlation, when there is no correlation between two variables. From this perfect correlation, we have two types. This perfect correlation has two types. One is perfect positive, and the next one is perfect negative. Perfect negative. Negative. When we have perfect positive correlation, the value is +1, and when we have perfect negative, the value is -1. From limited degree of correlation, we have 3 types. One is called high correlation. Another one is moderate correlation. And the third one is low correlation. Low correlation. Limited degree of correlation has 3 types: high correlation, moderate correlation, and low correlation. When our values range between 0.5 to 1, between 0.5 and 1, and minus 0.5 and -1, that is when our values are between 0.75 to 1 or -0.75 to -1. This is high degree of correlation. This is high degree of correlation. When our value ranges between 0.25 to 0.75 or -0.25 to -0.75, this is moderate degree of correlation. And low correlation is from between 0 to 2.5, 0.25, and minus, or we can say this is between 0 between 0 and 0.25 and 0 and minus 0.25. This is low correlation. And no correlation means when the value of correlation is 0. Correlation is shown by R. अब हम एक एक करके इनको उठाएंगे. Now we will take them one by one. First we have perfect correlation. Perfect correlation. Perfect correlation means when two variables change in the same proportion. When two variables change in the same proportion, in the same or constant proportion. Change in the same proportion or in the constant proportion, it is called a perfect correlation. When they change positively or negatively. When two variables change positively or negatively but in the same proportion, it is called perfect correlation. It has two kinds or two types. It has two types. A, we have perfect positive correlation. Perfect positive correlation. That is when two variables change in the same proportion, and in the same direction, and also in the same direction positively. Perfect correlation or perfect positive correlation is perfectly positive when proportional change in two variables in the same direction. When two variables change in the same direction by constant proportion. By constant proportion positively or directly. Positively. At that time, this is called a perfect positive correlation, and value of correlation is 1 plus 1, but it is plus 1. It is positive. Thus, coefficient of correlation, value of correlation is plus 1. And this next is perfect negative. Perfect negative correlation. When two variables move negatively but in the constant proportion. When two variables change negatively, that is in the opposite direction. In the opposite direction. In the opposite direction, but in the constant proportion. It is called perfect negative correlation. It is called a perfect negative correlation. At that time, the coefficient of correlation is -1. So when you see the correlation is -1, हम नाम देते हैं उस वक्त it is perfect negative correlation. जब +1 आएगा तो उस वक्त perfect positive correlation होती है. Perfect positive correlation. So these are the two kinds of perfect correlation. Perfect positive correlation and perfect negative correlation. When two variables change in the same direction, that is in the positively or directly, that is one increases another also increase, one decreases another also decrease, but by the constant proportion, but by the same proportion, in the same proportion, by the constant proportion positively, that is called perfect positive correlation. Value of correlation is +1. तो ये अपोजिट डायरेक्शन है, एक इंक्रीज होता है दूसरा डिक्रीज होता है, बट both change in the constant proportion. तो कोफिशिएंट उस वक्त -1 होता है. अब नेक्स्ट वन है, दैट इज लिमिटेड डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन. लिमिटेड डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन, ये क्या मतलब होता है? It is between perfect correlation and no correlation. The correlation between the correlation between the correlation between no correlation and the correlation between no correlation and perfect correlation. Perfect correlation is limited degree of correlation. Is limited degree of. So between perfect correlation and absence of correlation, there is situation of limited degree of correlation. In real life, one mostly finds limited degree of correlation. Its coefficient R is more than 0 and less than 1. At that time, the value of R is more than 0 but less than 1. So this is the situation when value of R, that is value of correlation, is more than 0 but less than 1. The degree of correlation between 0 and 1 may be treated as. Now the situations, there are different situations when value is more than 0 and less than 1. We can say there are three types of limited degree of correlation. There are three types. It has three types. तो परफेक्ट कोरिलेशन उसके दो टाइप हैं, इसके तीन है. थ्री टाइप्स ऑफ लिमिटेड डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन. ए, we have high correlation. High correlation. High correlation कब होती है? High correlation होती है when correlation of two series is close to 1. When relation between two series, when relation between two series is close to 1, close to 1, close to 1, is close to 1. So at that time, when there is high degree of correlation, the coefficient of correlation or value of correlation, coefficient of correlation is between 0.75 and 1, or moderate correlation, this is high correlation, or between minus 0.75 and minus 1. ये वैल्यू हो सकता है. So we have high correlation when relationship is close to 1. Correlation is close to 1. जब भी हमारा वैल्यू आएगा between 1 and 0.5 or minus 1 and minus 0.5, we have high degree of correlation. And the next is moderate correlation. इसका दूसरा है moderate correlation. Moderate correlation. Moderate correlation में क्या होता है? When correlation of two series is neither large nor small. When correlation is neither large nor small. ना ज्यादा है ना कम है, दरमियान में है, तो इसको कहते हैं moderate degree of correlation. It is moderate degree of correlation. Moderate degree of correlation. कोफिशिएंट क्या होता है इस वक्त? The coefficient of correlation is, the coefficient of correlation is between 0.25 and 0.75, or it is minus 0.25 and minus 0.75. So when R's value is 0.25 and 0.75 or minus 0.25, and this can be moderate positive and this is moderate negative. This is moderate positive correlation and this is moderate negative. Here it is high positive and it is high negative. ये जो वैल्यू है जो ऊपर हमने पढ़ा है ये है high positive correlation and this is high negative correlation. हाई नेगेटिव यहाँ सेम डायरेक्शन में जाता है, यहाँ अपोजिट डायरेक्शन में जाता है. तो लास्ट वन इसका जो है लिमिटेड डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन है वो है लो कोरिलेशन. दैट इज वी हैव लो कोरिलेशन. तीसरा इसका सी पार्ट इसका यहाँ ये सी पार्ट है लो कोरिलेशन or low degree of correlation. When degree of correlation of two series is very small, when degree of correlation is very small between two series, and correlation between two series is very small between two series. It is called a low degree of correlation. इसको कहते हैं it is called a low degree of correlation. Low degree of correlation. It is called a low degree of correlation. कोफिशिएंट क्या होता है? कोफिशिएंट इस वक्त क्या होता है जब और का वैल्यू कोफिशिएंट ऑफ कोरिलेशन at that time is between 0.25 and 0. When the value is between 0.25 and 0.25 and 0. Yes. It is 0.25 and 0 or minus 0.25 and 0. When value of correlation is between 0.25 and 0 or between 0 and minus 2.5 तो इसको कहते हैं हम ये मॉडरेट ये लो कोरिलेशन. तो लास्ट वन जो थर्ड वन है एब्सेंस ऑफ कोरिलेशन. When no relation exists between two variables or two series, when there is no relation between two series, कोई रिलेशन नहीं है. एक बढ़ जाता है दूसरा भी या बढ़े या घटे, कहीं बढ़े कहीं घटे विद इन द रिलेशन. तो एक का असर दूसरे पे कुछ नहीं है. When there is no relation, कोई रिश्ता दो सीरीज के दरमियान नहीं है, उसको कहते हैं हम it is absence of. If there is no relation between two series or variables, that is in one has no, if one has no effect on the other. If change in one variable have no effect on other. If change in, अगर एक चेंज हो गई दूसरे में कोई चेंज नहीं आ गई, if change in one has no effect, no influence on the other series, then those series or variables lack correlation or there is no correlation between two variables. The coefficient of variation, the coefficient of correlation is zero है. जब कोफिशिएंट ऑफ कोरिलेशन जीरो है, वैल्यू ऑफ कोरिलेशन जीरो है, तो उस वक्त ये हम कहेंगे देयर इज नो कोरिलेशन बिटवीन द टू वेरिएबल्स और बिटवीन द टू सीरीज. तो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट द डिग्रीज ऑफ कोरिलेशन. एक टेबल हम बनाएंगे जो थोड़ा बिल्कुल क्लियर करेगा कि डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन क्या होती है। एक टेबल हम बनाएंगे यहाँ, एक टेबल हम बनाएंगे जो बिल्कुल क्लियर करेगा कि बात क्या है, इसमें क्या होती है। ये हमारे पास टेबल है, ये है डिग्री, ये है पॉजिटिव, ये है नेगेटिव। अगर बात इस तरह है, we have परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन। अगर हमारी कोरिलेशन है परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव, ऊपर लिखेंगे हम डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन। ये टेबल सब कुछ बताएगा हमें कि क्या करना है, बात क्या है। डिग्रीज ऑफ डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन। अगर परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन है तो तब हमारा वैल्यू +1 आएगा। जब हमारा वैल्यू कोरिलेशन का वैल्यू +1 आएगा तो नाम दे देंगे इस तरह। अगर और का वैल्यू 1 आ गया तो उस वक्त हम लिखेंगे इट इज परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन। अगर क्वेश्चन ये हमें बताता है व्हाट डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन इज दिस, व्हाट डिग्री ऑफ कोरिलेशन एग्जिस्ट्स बिटवीन द टू वेरिएबल्स और बिटवीन द टू सीरीज, तो अगर हमारा वैल्यू r +1 आएगा तो हम कहेंगे इट इज परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन। तो अगर हमारा वैल्यू -1 आएगा तो हम कहेंगे इट इज परफेक्ट नेगेटिव कोरिलेशन। जिस तरह यहाँ r का वैल्यू 1 था, अगर r का वैल्यू -1 है तो इट इज परफेक्ट नेगेटिव कोरिलेशन, परफेक्ट नेगेटिव कोरिलेशन। इसी तरह अगर हाई पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन आ गई तो उस वक्त वैल्यू होता है बिटवीन 0.75 एंड 1 प्लस 0.75 एंड 1। अगर हमारा वैल्यू आ गया बिटवीन -0.75 एंड -1 तो उस वक्त हम कहेंगे इट इज हाई नेगेटिव कोरिलेशन। अगर इसी तरह मॉडरेट क्या होता है, मॉडरेट में वैल्यू होता है बिटवीन 0.25 एंड 0.75। यहाँ ये बिटवीन -0.25 एंड -0.75। इसी तरह लो पॉजिटिव कोरिलेशन, उस वक्त वैल्यू आएगा बिटवीन 0 एंड 0.25। यहाँ आएगा लो नेगेटिव कोरिलेशन में बिटवीन 0 एंड -0.25। तो ये हो गए 4। जब जीरो कोरिलेशन है, जीरो कोरिलेशन या नो कोरिलेशन, जीरो कोरिलेशन या नो कोरिलेशन, तो उस वक्त 0 आएगा, यहाँ भी 0 आएगा, यहाँ नो कोरिलेशन 0 वैल्यू, तो ये नो कोरिलेशन। So this is all about the degrees of correlation, degrees of correlation। ये टेबल हमें बिल्कुल क्लियर करता है कि परफेक्ट पॉजिटिव कब होगा, जब +1 होगा, परफेक्ट नेगेटिव होगा तो -1 होगा, हाई पॉजिटिव होगा तो बिटवीन वैल्यू होगा 0.75 एंड 1, हाई नेगेटिव होगा तो -0.75 एंड -1। इसी तरह मॉडरेट पॉजिटिव 0.25 between 0.25 एंड between 0.75। जब मॉडरेट नेगेटिव होगा तो बिटवीन -0.25 एंड -75। तो लो पॉजिटिव में बिटवीन 0 एंड 0.25, लो नेगेटिव में 0 एंड 0.25। जब नो कोरिलेशन है तो उस वक्त 0 आएगा हमारा वैल्यू। सो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट द डिग्रीज ऑफ कोरिलेशन। अब नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में हम पढ़ेंगे मेथड्स ऑफ एस्टिमेटिंग कोरिलेशन, कैसे हम कोरिलेशन कैलकुलेट करते हैं, कौन कौन से मेथड्स हमारे पास अवेलेबल हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।